We are rolling.
Cool. Courtney Durr, welcome to the potty.
Hello. It's nice to be here.
Good to see you. It's probably been a few years since we last caught up.
Yeah, I think maybe the last time that we did that interview together.
Don't bring it up.
I'm already bringing
Oh
it
my
up.
God. For the people listening, I was telling Courtney before the podcast that I found an old Facebook video of me. I must have been like 18, 19. And we were doing like a podcast basically.
Yeah.
And it was just so cringe. It was horrible.
And we're not putting that in the show notes.
No, never.
You guys will never see it.
That won't resurface.
Yeah.
But hey, welcome to the podcast. For people who aren't familiar with who you are, do you mind just introducing yourself?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Courtney Durr. I am the founder of Worldwild. So Worldwild is a business that helps women with their self-worth. So my whole thing, just to be as simple and brief as possible, is I just help women to help them have a healthy relationship with themselves, because the relationship that you have with yourself definitely stems into every area of your life. So yeah, I work mainly with wahine and through coaching and community.
Awesome. And you've been on that journey for a number of years now. I know we connected, as we said earlier, through Inspiring Stories, and you know, it was body love back in the day, and you're doing more sort of fitness and boot camps.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did that whole journey start?
Yeah, it's been, I feel, because we've known each other for quite a while, but my journey has definitely changed, and I think that it's definitely been a reflection of my own personal growth. So as I've kind of grown and expanded, the business has done the same. So I come from a really sporting background. My whole life, when I was younger, was sports. It's funny, I always, my sisters and my mum and my brother are really artistic, and I always kind of joked about how I never got the artistic abilities. I draw like a 5-year-old, but I got the sporting abilities. And so I definitely made that unintentionally my identity. It was just, everyone kind of spoke to me about sports and fitness and all of that. And so kind of being in school, I just thought, well, I'll naturally follow that. And I studied sport, and I went into exercise prescription and personal training, and then I kind of fell into running my own business. So I started working at Les Mills as a PT, personal trainer, and I just remember thinking, like, how the hell did I end up here? Because I would never have kind of picked myself as a business owner, but I definitely just kind of following my joy, which is something that I am really proud of myself for. I always follow my joy, and so following my joy, it kind of led from personal training into working mainly with women, and I guess through the personal training journey, I got to have really intimate relationships with my clients, and even though we were doing fitness, they would still kind of share with me their stories and their lives and their struggles, and I just remember thinking, like, oh, these amazing women are talking about themselves in such like harsh ways, and it just made me feel really sad. I never really recognized that I actually did that to myself. But
what were they saying? Like, what sort of things would you hear through your experiences with them?
Yeah, so what I noticed is that they would do all these incredible things. So, I'm working with mums and business owners and people who are, have these incredible talents. And what I found was that they were just focusing on what they weren't enough of. So it was they didn't feel comfortable, confident speaking of their strengths, and they only focused on, comparing themselves to either what they used to be or what people around them were. And so just, through that, I kind of just realized that actually this is the direction I want to go in. Yeah.
There's something almost, and sadly, innately Kiwi about that sort of way that we communicate and talk to ourselves. I had Jahan Castaneda on the podcast, and, he's written a book around his experience through battling mental health, and he talks about, putting on the mask, and every morning there's stories which you tell yourself wherever you're tying your shoelaces or having your breakfast or having your morning coffee from the experiences that you've had in your life. But if we can dive into those stories, he thinks we can help rewrite our own sort of narrative, if that makes sense. But
it makes a lot of sense.
But like, what is that makes, I guess women in particular feel that way?
Yeah, I think it's something that I've thought about a lot. Just this idea of what is confidence, and I think that a lot of the narrative that I heard was that people wanted to come across as humble. Like humble was, the best thing to be seen as, and I think that we kind of took it too far. I think humble is a beautiful quality, but I think that we kind of took it too far to the other end of the spectrum, where we would pretend that we didn't even know our strengths and we wouldn't talk about ourselves in a positive light, to the point where we actually forgot it, and then it became our truth. So it was just kind of like, and I think that is some part of it. And I also think that there's this idea of, if I speak well of myself, then either people are going to think that I'm being cocky, or people are going to disagree with me. And if people, say, I say like, oh, I look good, or I did really well in the meeting, if someone disagrees, it's, that's a really bad thing. So it's better to kind of, lower your own expectations of yourself, or speak less of yourself, because then people kind of, I guess, exceed those expectations, or say, no, you're great. And it's that, getting that external validation from other people is kind of nice. So.
Yeah. No, and is that like a journey that you have, I guess, is that a journey that you've had a lot of experience in firsthand, like maybe feeling those feelings when you were first sort of starting out in sport?
Yeah. I think that my journey is kind of interesting, because I had this perception of me that I was this confident, outgoing, positive person, and I just thought that, like, I definitely had a lot of toxic positivity. I don't know if you've kind of heard much about toxic positivity, but toxic positivity is where you are just saying, everything is okay, like, just be happy, happiness is the only appropriate emotion.
Right.
If somebody is sad, it's like, oh, don't cry, like, think of, like, look on the bright side. So that was kind of me. I remember just having like all these vision boards, and it was just like happiness and let's be positive. And I really saw myself as this like confident, positive person, and which seems like a positive thing to think about yourself, but it was a really strong identity, to the point where I didn't allow myself to have any other emotions, and I also kind of sacrificed my own needs and my own boundaries because I wanted to make other people feel comfortable. So I was like, I'm that positive, confident person around other people, so it makes them feel better. And I never allowed myself to be angry. I never allowed myself to feel to express my insecurities, or to just have low days. And if I did, I would suppress them, or I'd ignore them, or I'd just be really, really hard on myself. So yeah.
How does somebody, I guess, find their own identity? And it's something that as I'm getting older, I'm becoming more conscious of it. Like, I don't do meditation. I live in a really fast-paced world. My phone's always buzzing off, probably a borderline social media addiction. Like, it's, there's a lot of things there that kind of takes up so much of your focus and your attention. And it's easy not to really dive deep into those feelings, and to put on that mask. Like, I'm just trying to ask the question: how does somebody become conscious and aware of those sort of feelings enough to mean that they can change them?
Yeah, I mean, I think about it. I think about it a lot. I think about the concept of the masks that we wear and the identities that we have, and I think that whether those masks are positive, quote unquote, negative or neutral, I think that doesn't necessarily matter. What matters is the attachment that we have to them. So, for example, it's, I know that a lot of women have the identity of, let's use mum, for example. I'm a good mum, and that's the identity that they have of themselves, and then they have, the stories of what that means. And so if anybody was to push against say that they weren't being a good mum, or if they kind of fell outside of that, they would be really hard on themselves. So it's like, I'm a good mum, and that means that I give to my kids, I don't give to myself. I put everybody else before myself. I just do everything for my kids. And it's like, because that's the identity of like, my worth in this world is being a mother. Some other people, my worth in this world is being an athlete. And so
their job and their title.
My worth in this world, so the mask I wear is I am... I have high status. I have a good job. I earn a good living, and so the attachment to that is that if that's taken away from you, then you crumble. So it's like, I put my worth in these identities, but if somebody outside of me takes it away, or if that is taken from me, then what am I? And that's where like the breakdowns happen, and that's where we enter those really low states of self-worth. And so I think that, it's not necessarily the identities that's a bad thing, but the attachment that we have to them that's causing us a lot of struggle.
That's a really good point. Do you think things are getting better and more people are becoming conscious of, like your business Worldwild, and, reaching out for help or looking to explore ways to increase their sort of mental clarity and confidence within themselves? Yeah,
I definitely think that it's improving. I think that whilst, the big C, COVID.
Oh man, I just got the new antibodies 2 weeks ago. So yeah.
I think that that kind of forced a lot of people. I just remember being the first lockdown in New Zealand, where people were forced to, stay at home. It was just something that nobody had ever experienced. We're not allowed to, leave our house. We have to stay there, and a lot of people who were used to busying themselves and kind of numbing themselves, numbing their thoughts through work, through socializing, through, food and activities, busying themselves. They then were at home and they were with their minds, and it was like, what the F is this? Like, I don't want to be here with myself. And that's what I mean about helping women have a healthy relationship with themselves, is because a lot of people can't sit with themselves and be with their thoughts, and it's like people struggle to be in conversation with themselves. So I think that whilst COVID has been horrible in so many ways, it did, for a lot of people that I've worked with, it did help them kind of actually say, you know what, I need to look at this. I need to learn how to be in company with myself and learn how to enjoy that company. So I think that, yes, we have a long way to go, but it's starting to be more normalised. I also find it interesting in the way that in my comfort levels of telling people what I do, that I'm finding it easier now because people kind of know what a life coach is, or a self-worth, people know the concept of self-worth and that sort of thing. Whereas like a couple of years ago, it was like, what the bloody hell is that? Yeah, so, it's funny because sometimes I have conversations, in particular with I've had conversations with people in my family. I'll just say my dad, because I don't think he'll listen to this. But he'll use the term like new age bullshit.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry if I can't
swear.
You
swear away. Fucking you shit. Fuck.
Cool. Fuck.
Yeah.
But there's still I think definitely the older generations of new age bullshit is basically what I do, but it's fine. So we have a while to go, but I think it's improving.
That's a really good point around COVID and the lockdown, or the C word. You're right. I think it did make people look inwards rather than being so externally focused. And just, because it took people a second to actually pause and stop, right?
Yeah.
And thinking back on it,
baking and
the sourdough, what the hell, all of this other stuff. I guess on the other side, it did probably, there's always issues which comes from those sort of things. And hopefully we're away from the lockdown soon, because I figured out this last month I've done over 17 days of isolation, being a close contact, locking down my daughter, and then catching COVID, and then doing the 7 days. So this whole month has just been a blur.
Oh my God. Well, I'm very cocky, and I'm just like, nah, I'm not going to get it.
Yeah. It's a good mentality to have. Yeah.
Touch wood.
Totally touch wood. I guess transitioning from, working in the sort of physical space, doing boot camps, and then moving into more of the coaching role, what have you seen to be some of the biggest barriers around, empowerment and confidence building in women?
Well, something that comes to mind, and even kind of talking about normalizing, I guess, looking within and, building that strong relationship with yourself. I think that the saying ignorance is bliss makes a lot of sense. I think that it feels a lot safer to be ignorant, to be unaware, because when you start to recognize, these are my patterns, or these are my unhelpful thoughts that I experience, these are my regrets that I have. And when you start recognizing them, and then you see them show up in your current day of, through self-sabotage and holding yourself back, and, attracting toxic relationships, all of it. It's like when you become aware of it, it can feel really exhausting. And it's almost like I think that people find the discomfort of being with emotions that they maybe haven't sat with before. I never use positive or negative emotions. I think that emotions are all neutral, right. But there are definitely emotions that are more challenging to experience. And I think that when you start to do this work, people are just like, what? Like, why am I doing this? I feel worse. I feel worse when I look at myself and I look at these thoughts and I look at these patterns. I just want to go back to the familiar. And I think that's such a huge thing that stops people from kind of looking within and I guess unlearning unhelpful thoughts and patterns.
Where do you learn all this stuff? Because you're obviously wisdom above your years. Is this all based off, your own? Because it's just, there's no school on this sort of stuff. You know what I mean? Like, where do you get the knowledge around it? It's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm so happy that you brought that up, because that definitely touches on an insecurity of mine that I've been working through for years, since I was in school. So one of my limiting beliefs is that I'm stupid, and I can kind of look back to, where that came from. And I definitely, obviously I have to do this work myself. I cannot just be like, okay, this is how you do it, and not, go through the motions myself. Yeah. But so I have this limiting belief that I'm stupid, and I've had to kind of work through that and recognize that. I think definitely society tells you, you go to school, and then you go to university, and then you get a degree, and then you get a good job, and then you get a house, and then you find a partner, and then you get married and you have kids. And it's like, totally. Oh, okay, this is how people are supposed to do things if they want to be successful and they want to be happy. And I've really not done that. And I've definitely come a long way, but I haven't, I went to, I think it's called Polytechnic, that's where I studied sport, and then I went from sport straight into working, and I never went to a university. And it's the same with my family environment. We don't kind of thrive in those sort of normal studious environments. And so my learnings has come from definitely experience. One of my biggest values is growth. I am obsessed with learning. Whether that's through books and podcasts and courses and coaches, which I do a lot of, or through my own, day-to-day experiences in my relationships with people, and my own like thoughts and the ways that I get out of my comfort zone. So my learning has come from such different areas, but not from the, I guess, conventional kind of ways. And I do love that about myself as well, because I think that there's a lot of people out there like me who, maybe can't, I shouldn't say can't, but don't thrive in those learning environments. Mainstream learning environments that hold themselves back because they're like, well, what if somebody pulls me up on this, or what if I don't know the answer? And so I love that this is my story, and that I know that there's a lot of people that probably hold themselves back because they think that they're not good enough or smart enough. And here I am, like living my absolute dream, and not going the mainstream sort of conventional way.
I love that. I'll give you a cheers for that.
Oh, cheers.
Cheers. That is, honestly, when you were saying that, I just resonate with that so heavily. With my story as well, definitely haven't followed the sort of mainstream route. Had a baby at 16, decided to choose practical work experience over going to university because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, didn't want to clock up 30 grand worth of debt and be in a job, which I hate. So, took that sort of, I guess, left view path of... There's a good toot there. Hopefully we can edit that out. I can resonate with what you're saying, because I've also, haven't taken that mainstream path. And it's really easy when you see a lot of your friends who are going into that path and going to university, getting the degree, getting the photo with them in their frame. There is a part of you which feels like, oh shit, like that's not me. And the way that we see success in terms of society, it's, you do A, B, C, D, and E in that consecutive order. I don't want this to turn into a therapy session for myself, but I feel that's what it's turning into. But
let it out.
Oh yeah, I have to. That I think that does bring with it its own insecurities. It really does. And I feel that in my professional work at times, where I'm working with people who are a lot older than me. They've got that sort of education behind them. Some of them with PhDs. I'm just like, Jesus Christ, like what has this person got to get like off me in terms of value?
Yes. Yeah, I so resonate. That's actually been something that has been a really big, like it's been on the surface of my mind in terms of, I guess I definitely go through these like phases in my life where I'm like, oh, this is a big theme for this part of my life. And at the moment, late last year, kind of mid last year, I guess, I broke up with my partner and I moved home, and it was very like, okay, this is what's happening, like I'm just going to roll with it. And it's been really interesting that I also just turned 30, and it's kind of...
Happy birthday.
Thank you. But it's just this, the way that we are conditioned to believe like this is the timeline and this is what equals success. And I'm like, oh, okay, so I'm the single woman who's a single 30-year-old woman who's living at home with her parents, and I haven't got a house, I don't have kids, I don't have a degree. And when I'm not aware of my thoughts, and when I'm not conscious of what's going on upstairs in my noggin, I can feel really shit about that, and I can be like, I am a failure. But when I am more conscious of what's going on, I can say, actually, you know what? I feel so fulfilled in what I do. I feel so confident in myself. I'm so proud of everything that I've accomplished. I have an incredible support system. I'm so excited about my future. I feel very much where I'm meant to be. And that's, I think just taking the time to not be swept up in what society says, you should do this and you should do this, and if you don't, you're a failure, but actually recognizing these are the achievements. So, buying a house and getting a degree and having a certain type of job, they are definitely things to be proud of. And I'm not undermining that, but I also think that the more intangible things, like a sense of self-confidence, prioritizing your joy, having solid friendships and relationships with both others and yourself. I think those are things to be proud of as well. And I think that people kind of, they're like the more softer things. So people, or the more feminine things, and people are like, oh, well, that's not something to be proud of because I don't have something tangible that I can touch, and it's just bullshit. Yeah, that's what I call bullshit.
Yeah. Hey, we've dropped the F-bomb. Let's go on it.
No, you can't stop me.
Just thinking practically, I'm really keen to hear your thoughts around what the steps are that you take women through when they're dealing with insecurities.
So I run a program called Lighthouse, and on the day before my 30th, my good friend asked me, what is 3 things that you're most proud of from your 20s? And one of those things was starting Lighthouse. And Lighthouse is a group coaching program. It is run online thanks to COVID, but it's a group coaching program where I work with a group of maximum 20 women, and I help them have a stronger sense of self-worth and have a better relationship with themselves. I also help, bring like-minded women together, and it has just brought me so much fulfillment and so much joy and so much growth. And so I guess in terms of, I've been running it for 2.5 years now, and running that program and kind of having 3 months, it's just like, well, what can you do in 3 months? Some of these women haven't done any sort of self-development before, and some of them go to therapy. Like there was one woman who goes to therapy every week for the last 20 years or something like that. It was crazy. So there's such a wide group of women that do this program, and I'm kind of thinking to myself, like, how can I aid in this journey? How can I help them move through this journey? Because the thing is, I can't give them this tangible result at the end of 3 months, because this journey of, going within, of working through your stuff, it is literally a lifelong journey. So for me, the main things I would say in terms of, I guess working through your insecurities, one of the big things that has come up a lot is learning to be with uncomfortable emotions. I cannot stress how important it is to learn about emotions, learn about the multitude of emotions, but also learn to be with your emotions and feel them in your body. I think that a lot of the things that hold us back in life is because we're scared of sitting with uncomfortable emotions. So we don't, ask that person out because we're scared that we'll feel rejected. We don't put our hand up in a meeting because we're ashamed or we're embarrassed or we're scared. We, cancel that coffee date with that person, with a friend, because we feel anxious. Even on the other side, people struggle to feel feelings of like joy and excitement. And so it's just a lot of the things that hold us back from feeling how we want to feel, from achieving our goals, is the struggle of actually sitting with emotions. And it's been a really interesting thing for me, because I realize, if I'm willing to feel disappointment, if I'm willing to feel anger, if I'm willing to feel regret, embarrassment, sadness, then I'm unstoppable. So those emotions, they just have different vibrations in your body. Like regret feels different to anger, and anger feels different to sadness. And if I'm willing to sit with it and feel it in my body, accept it and allow it to, flow through and process out, then I am going to be able to do anything that I want in life. I'm going to be able to have such deep connections. I'm going to be able to go after, these incredible goals that I have. So I think emotions is a big one.
That's amazing. That's so true. So it's getting people comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And I think that when we're so in our head, it's like something, we feel fear and it triggers a response of we want to move away from fear, you know? So, and that's just the caveman mindset.
Yeah, the natural sort of response.
Yeah, it's like...
you don't like that feeling, it's not positive, so you try to, I guess, limit it as much as possible.
Yeah, because our job is to keep us alive. That is the job of the mind and the body, is to keep us alive. And so when we enter something that triggers the feeling of fear, without the awareness of actually what is this fear, without that awareness and that consciousness, we run the other way. You know, we're like, okay, that's a bad thing. I need to go the other way, because fear means potential of death. You know, that's like, it doesn't always, but that's what our mind is telling us. Yeah. And so we run the other way. And I think that in having a better relationship with yourself, you are able to show yourself compassion and understanding and be like, hey, Court, it's like, I know you're scared, but actually by leaning into this, you're going to grow, you're going to learn about yourself, and the possibility of actually, you know, what can come from it is so much greater than the fear of, you know, what you're scared of. So I think it's just this understanding of like, okay, I know that my body and my mind are trying to protect me, but it's not always in my best interest. Yeah.
Do you ever get like the feeling yourself of, you know, we kind of touched on it earlier around imposter syndrome? You know, I'm thinking of you, 30 years of age, and we talked about some of those insecurities either, but when you're coaching, I'm guessing a lot of the women are also a lot older than you, some of them might be. Have you ever felt that feeling of imposter syndrome?
Literally every day.
Yeah.
Every single goddamn day. Yeah, it's a real hard one. I have to talk to myself every single day, and especially like through the coaching calls. I remember there was this one round, and there was like a doctor in it, there was like a counsellor in the group.
That'd be a hard one, a counsellor.
It was, yeah, and there was like, like I think a woman in her 40s, and then there was, I think, a lawyer. Like, it was insane, and I was like, who the hell do I think I am? Like, what can I teach them? And what now I'm in of the mindset of like, I love that I have those feelings, because I'm like, this is why I do what I do, because it doesn't matter how someone appears on the outside. It doesn't matter their job. It doesn't matter what they look like. It doesn't matter how much money they have. Everybody deals with insecurities, and everyone deals with an inner critic. And knowing that I experience this, and I, you know, do so much work on myself, it's like, okay, actually everybody goes through this. And sometimes, actually a lot of the time, we need community, and we need someone outside of ourselves to remind us of, you know, how special we are and how worthy we are. So I think that through my own struggles and my own insecurities, it's weird, but it actually gives me the confidence to do what I do. And I think that one of my greatest strengths is my vulnerability. I am, like I said to you when we were messaging, like, I'm an open book. I really am. Like, I have nothing to hide. I have nothing to defend, and I have nothing to prove. And I recognize that I'm going to make mistakes, and I recognize that I'm not always going to have the answers. And in that gives me so much confidence, and reminds me that this is my gift, you know. So it doesn't matter if I don't have all of the answers. I think that I bring something really special to help women with, yeah.
Did you always have this, I guess, inner ability to have these conversations with people growing up? Like, if we were to ask your mum, for example, does it make you like, what was Courtney like as a little girl? Would you be like, oh, of course she's doing the work she's doing now?
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because the first thing that comes to mind is like what like mum would always say to me. Is she would always just be like, stop showing off, Courtney. Like, I would just like, as a little girl, like, I think maybe it was like a little bit of like middle child syndrome, but I don't hate attention. I don't mind being in the spotlight, which is interesting because the more I learn about myself, the more introverted I actually realize I am, but that's a whole nother story. But I grew up with sports, and I was always in team sports, and often I found myself captaining basically any sport that I played in. I was often the captain. I played softball professionally, and I actually don't know if I can say professionally. I played in the junior White Sox, which was like
professionally. Yeah, Jesus, come on, own it.
But I'm like, is that professionally? Because I don't know. Anyway. Okay. But
you're a pro.
Yeah, so I remember just being the youngest in the team. I was a catcher, and so the catcher in softball is the only person in the team that can see the whole field.
Are they behind the batter?
Yeah, they're behind the batter. So the catcher sees the whole field and calls the whole game. So the catcher tells the pitcher what to do. The catcher, everyone's listening to the catcher. Mm-hmm. And so I'm the youngest on the team, or one of the youngest on the team. I'm 15, 16 years old, and then everybody else is double my age. And so I'm just this little girl who's telling people what to do, and I think that from a young age definitely helped me. And then also another, I guess, contributing factor to the fact that I'm just meant to do what I do is I was the friend that was always giving advice. I would always be the one that people would come to for advice. And this was interesting because this is another identity that I had to work through because it's a positive label, but actually it meant that I exhausted myself and I wound up in friendships that weren't serving or weren't mutual. Again, that's probably another story, but I actually had to have a bit of a talking to myself about is that my friends are my friends. I'm not their coach. I have worth as a friendship, as a human as I am, and just because I'm not giving these pearls of wisdom every time I hang out doesn't mean that I'm not a good friend. Yeah. Which was So I think that Lighthouse and my job helps to be that outlet of okay, I've got all this advice and I've got all of these thoughts, here, have it, and not burden my friends or family with all of it.
Yeah. I feel like when you grow up, and especially in your 20s and your teenage years too, you go through so many different versions of yourself. What's that old Shrek quote? It's you got layers, right? You got so many different ones. Do you still feel like you will evolve as a person? I'm sure the answer is yes, right? But I guess I'll reframe that question. How did you know, and we probably all go through that stage growing up where, you might be drinking more than you should have, maybe not investing your time with the right people. How do you get out of those sort of ruts and, have a really frank conversation with yourself that, hey, maybe the group of friends or the activities I'm doing on the weekend isn't actually aligning to my goals?
Yeah.
How do you have that conversation with yourself?
I think, and this is a conversation that I've been having with a lot of people lately, is the concept of seasons and how, we go through so many different seasons in our life.
Sounds way better than onion layers.
Hey, I like that. So thinking about, again, I'm really conscious of not falling into that toxic positivity trap of when things are good, they have to stay this way. And if things aren't constantly progressing, and if I'm not, happy every day or progressing in my personal or professional life, then I'm a useless piece of, but actually reminding myself of seasons and that, I think of it like summer, spring, autumn, winter. So summer is the playful season. It's the season of experiencing, being, playing, and then you've got autumn, and autumn is the season of releasing and shedding, and that might be that season where you recognize, oh, okay, these friendships aren't serving me, or this relationship isn't serving me, this job isn't serving me, this environment isn't serving me, these thoughts aren't serving me. So that's just releasing those and unlearning. And then you've got winter, so maybe you've released those people or environments and you go through a state of resting, but it can feel really lonely in winter, and that's not something to be fixed. That's something to be sat with and experienced. So you've got winter where there's not much movement. That's more survival. And I think that in that season, like if somebody was in their winter season, I wouldn't want them to do Lighthouse. Like I think that it's, you know, that's the season that you're in where you're just like, look, I'm just stoked to get out of bed. I'm just like just trying to get the basics. You know, life's a lot right now. And I think that was the case for a lot of people going through COVID and dealing with just a lot of external stuff, let alone the internal stuff. So in those sort of seasons, like, hey, this is rest. This is just, you know, being in this space. Not that comfortable, but I think that's where we have to really add an extra self-care. And then you've got spring. And yeah, I think that my spring gals and my autumn gals are like who I best work with. So spring is like, okay, like I've rested, I'm ready to grow, I'm ready to explore, I'm curious, I'm learning, I'm meeting new people.
Right. Taking risks.
It's uncomfortable, but it's also exciting.
Yeah.
So I think of my life like that, and I think that, you know, I definitely went through periods of like drinking and, you know, being an idiot, and I went through seasons of like fun, but I'm like, I know that they'll come back around in some, you know, in a different shape or form, and just kind of accepting that it makes it a little bit easier to manage, I guess.
Yeah. No, it's seasons over onion layers. Sounds way better. I feel like with your work, a lot of it is around community building, and you know your Instagram game is on fleek. What is the secret? It's,
I haven't heard that in a while.
It's good.
Fleek.
I'm bringing back the word fleet, like I didn't say fleet. Like I didn't say the word lit. But do you have like your social media is bloody brilliant. How much time do you spend investing into that?
Don't talk to me about that. No, I have a funny relationship with Instagram and social media. I am so grateful for it, and I also hate it. But I see it as my responsibility to bring, I guess, a lighter feel to, I don't know if lighter feel is the right way of explaining it, but I want to have my presence on social media be of value, because I think that a lot of people are spending time on social media, and it can get really toxic, and you can fall, you know, into the comparison trap. You can fall into the feelings of not good enough. You can fall into the numbing and avoiding certain things. And so I guess when I'm on social media, I'm not just on there to just be on there. I'm on there to provide some sort of value. Like I want people to go, if they, you know, go on it and they go on my page, I want them to feel either joy or like they're not alone, or like they're learning something. Like those three things, that's like my main purpose on social media. So,
I was going to mention that, and I probably should have said that when I asked the question, but with looking through your social media, you know, there's lots of themes of vulnerability around there, and that's something which you don't see from, you know, especially a lot of Instagram models or just anybody in general, because you don't share the shit days, you rather share the good days.
Yeah.
Is that important for you, and is that something you encourage other people to sort of step up on a bit?
Yeah, I think that, like I said before, vulnerability is my superpower, and I like hate it sometimes. Like sometimes I just wish that I could just use it as like a highlight reel. I mean, I can, but like I'm like, that's not going to achieve anything, and that's just going to add to the problem. But I honestly treat it like my diary. I don't really, unless I'm working through things, I don't often hold back, and it's actually really freeing for me. So for me, when I was personal training, I had, the identity, the mask of a personal trainer. I remember going to Burger Fuel one night, and I bumped into this guy from school, and he's like, "Oh, Courtney, like, you shouldn't be in Burger Fuel. Like, I thought you're Miss Health or something like that. And I remember going to like the supermarket and bumping into clients and them like looking at my basket and like just this idea of like, oh, you're a personal trainer. This is the food you should eat. This is the life you should live. This is how your body should look. And it gave me a lot of anxiety. I found like I was having to, I really hurt myself physically and mentally to try and be portrayed as this personal trainer. So I really like hurt my body and my body image as well. I was scared to like bump into people, you know, on the streets, and I just thought that's exhausting, like having to live these multiple lives of like, oh, like in the gym, I'm this person, but then at home I can like be this person. And then in the clubs, I'm this person and I just hope that I don't bump into, you know, and I just thought, you know what, that's too exhausting for me. So it is like, it is for the people, but it's also for myself of like, actually, this is who I am. I'm not happy all the time. I'm not done up all the time. I don't always have the answers and I do make mistakes, and it's honestly just, and I think I do encourage people to do this because I think that, you know, people don't have to, you know, treat Instagram as their diary, but I think that the more we can, you know, remove those masks and be honest about our struggles and, you know, ourselves, the more freeing we'll feel, and the less angst we'll have about trying to uphold this, this, I guess, identity.
Yeah. Geez, just imagine how politicians would feel as well, you know, like the public scrutiny of their job being in the public eye. Like, fuck, I just don't know how anyone can do that. Honestly,
it's exhausting to think about, and the thing that I think about with vulnerability is that people crave connection. They crave connection, they crave to be understood, and they crave to be liked and loved. And then what we do is we think that, oh, we have to be perfect. So in order to be loved, we have to be perfect, we have to look amazing, we have to not make any mistakes, we have to have all the answers, we have to be doing really well. But I don't know about you, I know for me personally, like when somebody shows me who they really are, like their weirdness, their quirks, their uncertainty, their truth, I'm like obsessed with them. I'm I feel so much, maybe not obsessed, but like I feel so much closer to them, and I feel a much deeper connection than if someone was like, oh, like I want to come across this way and, you know, everything's fine and I'm happy, and I'm just like, there's a block there.
Agreed.
So I think that vulnerability is just, if we can encourage ourselves to do that more, it would be would make our lives a lot easier.
Yeah, leave a lot of weight off our shoulders and the burden for sure. Really keen to get your thoughts as well, just on, I guess, your view and take on starting your own business. You know, a big part of this podcast is around inspiring others to, like what we said earlier, you know, choose the path less traveled. What really brought you towards wanting to start your own business?
I think that initially it was just following my joy. I think that, and I don't want to say this and have people kind of use it as a reason not to follow their dreams. But I think that I was really lucky with my parents. They were, you know, when I said, I don't want to do 7th form, I just want to follow sport, like this makes me happy and I just want to do this, and they were like, sweet. And then, you know, I was like, okay, I'm gonna start my business, and they were supportive of that, which I'm grateful for. But I was always encouraged to follow my joy, and I think that I have done that my entire life, and that has led me to running a business. But I also think that I'm a really shit employee, should I say. I'm a really, like, I don't like being told what to do. I think that I'm pretty stubborn. And I also, you know, I find that some days I will do 3 weeks worth of work, and then like some days I will like do literally nothing. And I just think that the way I am, I'm so thankful that I run my own business, because I just don't I just don't know.
I'm so envious. Wish it was me.
So, I think that just kind of knowing the way that I am definitely helps me to be doing what I do. I have thought many, many times, what the hell am I doing? Can I really do this? Actually, you know what, maybe the 9-to-5 job is for me. I have thought about quitting so many times.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. And then I come back to, there's going to be pros and cons in everything you do.
Yeah.
There's going to be sacrifices and rewards in every single thing you do. So this is not me saying 9-to-5 jobs suck, like get out of the rat race. Like it's not that at all, but it is recognizing, you know, yourself and knowing yourself a bit better and knowing that, okay, with a 9-to-5 job, there's going to be sacrifices and there's going to be rewards. With running your own business, there's going to be sacrifices and rewards. So those times where I was really, really struggling in my business, I just had to ask myself, which sacrifice am I willing to have? So within my business, the sacrifice that I experience is uncertainty. I don't know when my next pay is coming in. I don't have, you know, holiday pay or sick leave. So there's the uncertainty, the sacrifice of privacy. So actually, I can't just, you know, go off social media. That's such a huge part of what I do. So I am putting myself out there, and it is really uncomfortable. So the sacrifice of privacy, and then in a 9-to-5 job, it's the sacrifice of freedom, for example,
Yes.
in terms of, you know, having to ask, you know, when to take your lunch or when to go on holidays and things like that. And then there's the sacrifice of not being able to choose, you know, who you work with or what environment you work in. And so neither is better on the whole, but for me personally as an individual, I'm like, one of my biggest values is freedom. I've got growth as a huge value, and I've got freedom as a huge value. And if I was to move into, you know, more certainty, I'd be losing something that was really important to me. So it's like what gets me through. Yeah. So I think in terms of like if somebody wanted to start their own business or was unsure about it, just getting clear on what their values are, what they value, and what sacrifices they are willing to have. Because running your own business is not just sitting in cafes drinking coffee and like, you know, like, I don't know, whatever people perceive it to be. Yeah. There's ups and there's downs.
Yeah. No, certainly pros and cons to everything. And I think it's so easy for that, you know, high flyer, entrepreneurial, you know, making worlds of cash. You see them sometimes on your YouTube ads. Like,
oh God, yeah.
I worked for one day and I made $4,000. It's like, oh, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
But no, that's definitely really special. Hey, before we wrap things up, Courtney, where can people find out more about you and your work?
Yeah, well, you can find me on the gram for sure. I'm on there a lot, and that is at Worldwild.co.
Hopefully you get that right. Jack, can we try and make that pop down? Do like a cool fancy thing. We'll make it pop down.
Go. Oh, damn it. So yeah, worthwhile.co. My website is www.worthwhile.co. And I've actually been on TikTok a bit more now,
nice.
Keeping it up with the young kids.
Some dances or?
Definitely not. Yeah, so no, there's no dances, but that's actually been, I actually am a really creative person, just in a different way to my sisters. But TikTok has been a really cool place to kind of experiment with my creativity. So you can find me, I think it's Worthwild Coach, on there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Perfect. We'll put some links in the Spotify description, and also we'll put it in the YouTube links as well. Cool. We've got some quick fire questions.
Oh, no.
They're not too hard. And then we're going to finish with a quote.
Okay.
I guess the first one is actually really hard. And it's something that I ask all the guests. So what is the meaning of life?
Oh my God. The meaning of life is to experience joy, be in relationship with others, be loved. I think that everybody, this is not really quick, but I think that women are definitely led to believe that to be selfless and to give is the that's what makes a woman worthy. I think to give is incredible and such a beautiful thing, but I think that we are not just put on this earth to help others. We are also put on this earth to experience pleasure and joy and growth. And so I think that it's both giving and receiving and experiencing. Yeah.
Nice. Love it. Favorite musician at the moment?
Oh my God. Well, I'm just gonna say Coldplay because
nice.
Only because I've been listening to them a lot while I've been writing, and they just bring me a lot of joy. Yeah.
I love their is it Parachutes, that album? It's the old one.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's a good breakup album.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with that.
Yeah.
I love that album. Yeah.
Advice you wish you knew about when you were younger?
Oh, advice that I wish I knew.
You're talking to the 16-year-old Courtney who's confused about their future.
I think it would be something to do with the fact that I guess I'll go to Glennon Doyle's quote of, when a woman learns that it's impossible to please everyone, she becomes free to please herself. And I think that I am a recovering people pleaser, and just recognizing that not everybody is going to like me, and that doesn't define my worth, and that doesn't mean that I'm any less of a human, but just to lean more into who I am and my authentic self, and know that, yes, I'm going to piss some people off, yes, I'm going to upset some people, but that's just a part of life. Yeah.
Don't give a shit.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Mic drop. What does legacy mean to you?
Legacy, I think...
Or what is your definition of legacy? What does it mean to you?
I think when you ask me that, what I think about is the interactions that I have with people on a daily basis. Like, I don't think of it as like on a grand scheme. I think of it in the little moments of like how you make someone feel, just, for example, knowing somebody's name and saying someone's name is really important. Eye contact is really important. Listening and, I guess just like being in presence with someone. I honestly think that's the legacy that I want to leave, is in those small moments on the daily, not this like really big grand thing of like, oh, this was this person that started this massive thing. It's like, oh, I remember her.
Nice. The way you made people feel. And
totally.
Yeah. Beautiful. Awesome. Hey, we're going to leave with a bit of a quote, but just want to say a massive thank you for jumping on the podcast. I've loved this conversation. Love your work. You're an awesome person. And just a big thanks.
Oh, thank you. I've honestly, I could keep yarning to you for ages.
First wahine on the podcast as well. So boom, there's going to be more where this comes from, guys. Cool. Here we go. You should never view your challenges as a disadvantage. Instead, it's important to understand that your experience failing and overcoming adversity is actually one of your biggest advantages. Cheers.
Yes.